Hello, and thank you for watching my video today. Today we're going to make easy bread slash bun recipe. This recipe I actually use for a lot of things. I use it for pizza crust, buns, bread, my pot pies. I use it for a lot of stuff because it's quick and easy. Will it make really good rolls? I have another recipe for that, and it takes a lot longer just because it's a little bit thicker, a little denser. Part of it is you can use milk and it will actually make it a little bit heavier. So right off, first we add 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and 3/4 of a tablespoon of yeast. Any brand really works. I have Red Star because I buy it in bulk. And if you buy it in bulk, really keep it in the freezer and just put a little bit in your fridge and use it off of that. That's what I do. I usually get about 2 pounds at a time. Next, you add the warm water. Now you don't want it too cold and you don't want it too warm. If it's too hot, it'll actually kill the yeast. So pretty much if it's warm enough that you don't want to keep your finger in there too long, go ahead and use that. I believe it's about 110 degrees. Don't quote me on that. So now we just wait. We let it steep. And what that means is you wait until the yeast starts to activate and it will actually get kind of foamy inside. You don't always have to do that with this recipe because it'll actually, what that's doing is you're knowing your yeast is good. I tend to do it now. It seems to make a thicker bread inside with less air holes. And I also, when I let it rise, I don't punch it down and then put it in and let it rise again. I go ahead and I put it right in. I let it rise in the greased pan and then cook it. It's not as tall as some of your homemade breads, but it's a lot more dense, and I think it makes really good sandwich bread. So let's just wait until this gets all ready to go. So this is what you're kind of looking for. You can let it go a little bit longer. It's up to you. As long as there's a good foam on top, that's what you want. Okay, the next step, you can use 2 tablespoons of butter, any kind of lard, grease, anything like that. This is actually hamburger grease. I kind of like that with my buns. It has been purified. And to purify it, what I'll do is you let it solidify in the fridge, take the top off from kind of the jelly bottom, boil it in water. Almost all the stuff will fall to the bottom, and then you strain it. And what you're left with is pretty much a clear oil. Works great, actually gives good flavor to a lot of breads. This is what I'll use for the buns. This is butter. This is what I'll use for the bread. You can also use any kind of oil, like olive oil or canola oil or any of that, as long as it's 2 tablespoons. Also, my hands tire out very quickly from kneading bread to mix it up. So to make it a little bit easier, I've actually got a bread machine. The only thing I use it for is mixing it up. Now, if you're doing 1 loaf at a time, it works perfect. If you're doing more than 1 loaf, then it's a little much for this. So, back to your hands. And there's no reason you can't use your hands if you want to. This just makes it easier for me. We'll start off with the bread. So I'll add the butter. And then 3 cups of flour. Easy as that. Now, I'll put it in the bread machine. If you're kneading it with your hands, just knead it until it starts pulling away from the side of the walls and isn't too sticky to handle. With this, 3 cups of flour is what I always add. Sometimes it may be just a little bit stickier, but usually it works perfect. For this, stick it on. I'll just hit start for the normal bread, and it'll kind of slowly spin up a little bit, and then it'll start spinning constantly. I'll kind of walk away and do something else, and I'll let it go until it gets to a good ball. Or sometimes I've even forgotten, and it will actually stop, and then that's one of the warming phases. Then I'll turn it off, pull it out, and we'll put it in the pan. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, when it's done, it should look something kind of like this. And look, not really sticky. Now, I will work it just a little bit with my hands a lot of times. Make sure they're clean. Take off all rings anything that could get the dough stuck in them. If you have a cut or anything, wear a rubber glove or a silicone glove or something like that. So just kind of work it like that into what kind of looks like a loaf. Slap her down in there, cover it up with a towel. I like to use wax paper sometimes. Put it in a warm spot, let it rise for at the most an hour. An hour it's going to be pretty tall. And the bad thing about this dough, if you let it rise too much, it's actually going to get a lot of holes in it. But this is one of the easiest breads you can make. I'm going to let it sit over there probably a half hour till it gets maybe level with this. And then we'll stick her in the oven for 35 minutes. As you might hear, I've already got the buns down there mixing. So, this recipe only has 6 ingredients, if you count water. I'll put that in the description, the recipe for this, just like I have with the others. Now, let me get this over and get it covered, and we'll come back and I'll show you how I make the buns. Okay, now for the buns. Like I said, this not sticky. I mean, it's tacky, but it's not sticky. You want to put a little bit of flour down. Just kind of work it. We'll use the rolling pin in a minute. But I kind of like, this is how I do my pizza crust too. I kind of work it out. No, I don't flip it up in the air or anything. Work it out, and then flop her down. And we use the rolling pin. This is my grandma's rolling pin. I use it for quite a bit for noodles, for bread. Works out good. So just work it out till you get about the thickness you want. Probably about half an inch or so, depending on how many you need. Usually, I'll make a double batch of these. Alright. This is a sugar cookie cutter. Works out good for the buns. I actually have a bun cutter too, but it's a little big to use with this. Now you don't need to use this. You can just cut them out. That's what I used to do. Put them on some parchment paper. Put them in the oven. This is just awesome. I think it was like $10 on Amazon. It's just made for buns. Put it down. It's silicone. You wash it. It's just easy to use. And it gives them a little bit of texture on the bottom too, so then they look like almost like store-bought. But pretty easy. Cut them out. There you go. Slap them down. Rinse and repeat. Now if you have some dough left over, sometimes I might flatten it out, put a little bit of butter and sugar and cinnamon on it and make it into a little dessert. Now, same thing with these. Gonna set them off somewhere where it's warm. Usually I'll preheat the oven, set it on top of the oven and just let the heat come up through the top and help them rise. We'll put a little something on top of them just to keep them from drying out, and then we'll get them ready for the oven. And maybe we'll make this into something too. The buns have finished rising. It's been about 50 minutes. Now, just so you can see the difference, I'm going to mix up a little bit of an egg wash, and I'll wash half of them with it and half without, so you can see what the difference is while they're cooking. Egg wash is just an egg and a little bit of water, whisk it together, and then brush it on the top. I'll let you see that. Okay, so here's the egg wash. Now, just kind of brush it on top. Sometimes this works good if you have an excess of flour, because it'll help get the flour off too. Okay, we'll do one more here. Did you watch which ones I did? It's your job to remember which one they are. I usually put these in the oven for about 12 to 15 minutes. You can tell when they're done. They'll start to get kind of golden on top, especially the ones with the wash. Let's get them in. Okay, it's been about an hour, a little bit more probably, and that's about how much it's risen. So that's about perfect for me. We'll put a little bit of an egg wash on it, just to give it that nice golden brown coloring. I don't do this every time. I just made 2 over the weekend loaves of bread, and I didn't do it at all. My girls don't care. Sometimes I like to do it just for presentation. It can also help it to not dry out, maybe rise a little bit more in the oven too. And that's it. Now we'll stick this in the oven. You can do 1 loaf or 2 loaves, and it still takes about 30 to 35 minutes. If you want to know for certain, stick a toothpick or a knife down the center of it. If it comes out clean, it's done. For me, usually I just stick these in for 35 minutes, pull them out, I know they're done. Here are the buns, fresh out of the oven. They're still pretty hot. I don't know if you can tell from there. See the shiny brownness of the bun, the top of it? That was an egg washed one. And if you add milk, I have found, to the egg instead of water, they'll get even browner. And if you leave them in a little bit longer, they'll get a darker brown too. Here's one without the egg wash. See how thick those are? These turned out almost perfect. So now, we'll get them off of here and get them over to cool. And there you have it. There's our buns, and there's our still hot bread. We only eat homemade bread, so hopefully, if there's no bread on the shelves of the store, you learned something today and you can make your own. It just tastes better than the store-bought. A little bit more work, but it's good. Okay, what? Oh, what happened to the cinnamon rolls? Oh, look, there's one missing already. But that brings us to the end of the video again. So, like I said, I hope you learned something, and maybe you can make your own bread. It's not hard. I'm sure you can do it. Again, I'll put the recipe down in the description. Thanks for spending your time with me, and if you like this, please click the like. If you want to see my future videos, subscribe. Remember, we're in this all together. We'll get through it.